The transport ship landed with a soft hum on the crystal platform of Zirian Prime. Commander Ben Torres stepped out and looked up at the massive palace that stretched toward the purple sky. The entire building seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. He had never seen anything so beautiful. "Remember, Commander," his aide whispered beside him. "One wrong move and we're all banned from their space forever. 17 other species have failed here." Ben nodded but kept his eyes on the palace. Earth needed this deal. The rare minerals found only in Velthani space could power human colonies for the next 1,000 years. Without them, human expansion would stop completely. 2 tall figures in flowing robes approached the landing pad. Their skin was silver and covered with glowing blue patterns that shifted like living tattoos. Ben recognized them as palace guards from the briefing materials. "Commander Torres," one guard spoke in perfect English. "Princess Zara awaits you in the Hall of Eternal Protocols. Please follow the blue lights and do not deviate from the path." Ben followed the glowing trail through corridors filled with floating crystals and strange music that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Other aliens stopped and stared as he passed. Some had multiple arms, others had scales instead of skin. All of them looked worried. The Hall of Eternal Protocols was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above, and the walls were covered in moving symbols that told the history of the Velthani Empire. At the far end of the room, on a throne that looked like it was carved from a single diamond, sat Princess Zara. Ben had seen pictures of her during his briefing, but they did not prepare him for meeting her in person. She was tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Her blue markings were brighter than the guards, forming complex patterns across her face and arms. Her hair was white as starlight and moved as if it floated in water. But what struck Ben most was her expression. Despite her beauty, she looked tired. Her shoulders were tense, and her eyes held a sadness that reminded him of soldiers who had seen too much war. Around the throne stood dozens of court officials, all watching Ben with suspicious eyes. He could feel their judgment with every step he took toward the princess. "Commander Torres of Earth," Princess Zara's voice was like music, but formal and distant. "You come seeking trade agreements with the Velthani Empire. Before we can discuss such matters, you must prove your species understands proper protocol." She rose from her throne and moved to the center of the hall. The crystals in the room began to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. "I will now perform the welcome of strangers," she announced. "You must respond with the response of humble gratitude. Any deviation from proper form will result in immediate expulsion from our space." Ben watched as Princess Zara began what could only be described as the most complex dance he had ever seen. She moved between floating crystals that appeared around her, each one humming a different note. Her hands traced patterns in the air that left glowing trails behind them. The blue markings on her skin grew brighter and began to pulse in time with the crystal song. The dance told a story. Ben could see it even without understanding the formal meaning. It spoke of welcome, but also of testing. Of hope, but also of fear. It was beautiful and sad at the same time. For 20 minutes, Princess Zara danced among the crystals. Her movements never faltered, even though Ben could see sweat forming on her silver skin. This was clearly exhausting, but she continued with perfect grace. When she finished, the crystals faded and she stood breathing heavily in the center of the hall. Every eye in the room turned to Ben. He could feel the weight of their expectations. Ben had studied the response of humble gratitude for months. It involved 37 specific hand movements, 16 different phrases in ancient Velthani, and required him to summon his own crystals using harmonic frequencies he barely understood. Instead, Ben stepped forward and said, "Thank you. That was beautiful." The silence that followed was deafening. Court officials gasped. Guards reached for their weapons. Someone in the back of the hall made a sound like a dying animal. Ben ignored them all and looked directly at Princess Zara. "Now, how can we help each other?" "You," Princess Zara stared at him in shock. You just violated the welcome protocol. You were supposed to perform the response of humble gratitude. I know, Ben said simply. But I figured actually listening to what you were telling me was more important than following a script. What I was telling you? Princess Zara's voice cracked slightly. Your dance, Ben explained. It wasn't just a welcome. You were telling me about pain. About something that's hurting your people. About how tired you are of ceremonies that don't solve real problems. Princess Zara took a step back. In 3,000 years of the welcome protocol, no one had ever interpreted the emotional content of the dance. They all focused on performing the correct response. Commander Torres, one of the court officials, stepped forward angrily. You have insulted our princess and violated our most sacred traditions. You will leave immediately. Wait, Princess Zara raised her hand. The official stopped speaking instantly. She studied Ben with new interest. You think our ceremonies don't solve real problems? I think you're brilliant people with incredible abilities, Ben said honestly. But I also think you're dying, and your traditions aren't helping. Another gasp from the court. Speaking so directly to royalty was unthinkable in Velthani culture. But Princess Zara moved closer to Ben. What makes you think we're dying? Ben gestured around the hall. Your guards are worried. Your people in the corridors look scared. And you, he looked directly into her eyes, you look like someone carrying a weight that's too heavy for one person. For a moment, Princess Zara's royal mask slipped completely. Ben saw fear and exhaustion and desperate hope all mixed together in her expression. There is, she said quietly, a plague affecting our people. The court officials shifted nervously. This was not supposed to be discussed with outsiders. How many have died? Ben asked gently. Thousands, Princess Zara whispered. Our best healers perform the traditional ceremonies, but nothing works. The plague spreads faster than we can treat it. What have you tried? Everything our ancestors teach us. Sacred healing dances, harmonic crystal treatments, ritual purification ceremonies. All of it follows proper protocol exactly. Ben felt a spark of understanding. What if the problem isn't your methods, but your approach? I don't understand. You're trying to heal a new disease with old solutions, Ben explained. What if this plague requires new thinking? New methods that don't exist in your traditions yet? Princess Zara looked around the hall at her advisors. They all wore expressions of horror at Ben's suggestion. Our ways have served us for millennia, an elderly official spoke up. We do not abandon tradition lightly. I'm not asking you to abandon anything, Ben said. I'm asking you to add to it. Humans have dealt with many plagues in our history. We've learned that sometimes you have to try new approaches, combine old wisdom with new science. Heresy, another official muttered. But Princess Zara was listening intently. What would you suggest? Let my people help, Ben said immediately. Bring human medical teams here. Let us study this plague alongside your healers. Maybe together we can find something neither of us could discover alone. The hall erupted in angry voices. Officials shouted about protecting their secrets, maintaining their purity, following proper procedures. But Ben only watched Princess Zara. She was thinking, he could see it. For the first time in probably years, someone had offered her hope instead of more ritual. That would require, she said slowly, accepting outsiders into our most sacred healing chambers. Yes. It would mean sharing knowledge we have never shared with any other species. Yes. It would violate dozens of our oldest laws. Probably. Princess Zara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. There is a way. One ancient law that supersedes all others. But it requires, she paused and looked directly at Ben, the ceremony of eternal bonding. Which is a marriage contract between the representatives of our species. The hall fell silent again. Ben felt his aide grab his arm in panic. "Commander," his aide whispered frantically, "that's essentially a political marriage. It would bind Earth to Velthani law permanently. You can't agree to that without authorization from the Council." Ben looked at Princess Zara. Her silver skin had gone pale, and her blue markings were flickering weakly. She looked like someone who had offered her last hope and was already preparing for rejection. "Your Highness," Ben said formally, "are you asking me to marry you?" Princess Zara's composure cracked completely. For just a moment, she looked like a young woman who had spent too many years carrying responsibilities too heavy for her shoulders. She started, then stopped. When she spoke again, her voice was professional, but Ben could hear the emotion underneath. "The ceremony of eternal bonding would create a legal framework allowing full cooperation between our species. It would be a political arrangement, nothing more. But it would let us help your people." "Yes." Ben didn't hesitate. "Then yes. I accept." The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't shock at protocol violation. This was complete disbelief. Princess Zara stared at him. "You accept? Just like that? Just like that?" "But you don't understand," she said frantically. "This isn't a human marriage. The ceremony of eternal bonding means you would be tied to Velthani law forever. You would have to live here, follow our customs, submit to our courts. Your entire life would change." Ben shrugged. "My entire species might die without those mineral rights. Your people are definitely dying from this plague. Seems like an easy choice. You would sacrifice your freedom for people you've never met. I would gain the chance to save lives and build something better between our species," Ben corrected. "That's not sacrifice. That's opportunity." Princess Zara was staring at him like he was speaking an alien language. "In our culture, marriages are negotiated for years. Families exchange gifts, perform ceremony after ceremony, ensure perfect compatibility. You're agreeing to bind yourself to someone you met 20 minutes ago." "I'm agreeing to help someone who's been carrying an impossible burden alone," Ben said. "And to be honest, I'd rather be tied to someone who cares enough about her people to try desperate solutions than someone who's too worried about proper procedure to save lives." Something changed in Princess Zara's expression. The exhaustion was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Hope, maybe. Or wonder. "You really mean it," she said softly. "You would do this?" "I really would." "But why? What do you gain from this?" Ben smiled. "Maybe I gain the chance to work with the most brilliant woman I've ever met to solve an impossible problem. Maybe I gain a partnership with someone who cares more about saving lives than saving face. Maybe I gain the respect of a people who've survived for thousands of years by being careful and wise." Princess Zara's blue markings began to glow brighter. "Or maybe you gain a species that thinks you're completely insane for agreeing to marry someone without proper courtship." "Maybe," Ben agreed. "But your people are dying, and mine need what you can provide. Seems like being thought insane is a small price to pay for solving both problems." For the first time since Ben had entered the hall, Princess Zara smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and more alive. "You're not what I expected from a human diplomat," she said. "You're not what I expected from an alien princess either," Ben replied. "I thought you'd be more cold. Calculating. Concerned only with protocol. I was going to say more willing to let other people handle the hard choices," Ben said. "Instead I find someone who's willing to break every tradition her people have if it means saving them." Princess Zara's smile grew wider. "My advisors would say that makes me a terrible princess. Your people would say it makes you exactly the leader they need." The court officials had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm. Finally, the eldest stepped forward. "Your Highness," he said urgently, "surely you cannot be seriously considering this madness. The ceremony of eternal bonding has not been performed in over 500 years. The human knows nothing of our ways. This violates every precedent. Princess Zara turned to face her advisor, and Ben saw the royal mask slide back into place. But now he could see it for what it was, not coldness, but protection. A way to be strong enough to make the hard choices. Lord Valdris, she said formally, how many of our people died yesterday from the plague? 43, Your Highness. And how many the day before? 51. And our healer's latest attempt at a cure? Lord Valdris looked uncomfortable. The ritual of sacred cleansing showed no effect, Your Highness. Then perhaps, Princess Zara said quietly, it is time to try something that violates precedent. She turned back to Ben. Commander Torres, the ceremony of eternal bonding is complex and requires significant preparation. Are you prepared to remain on Zirian Prime for the necessary arrangements? I'll stay as long as needed. And you understand that once the ceremony is complete, you will be bound by Velthani law as if you were born to our people? I understand. And you accept that this marriage, while primarily political, will be legally binding in all ways? Ben paused at this. It was one thing to agree to help, another to commit to a lifetime with someone he barely knew. But when he looked at Princess Zara, he didn't see a stranger. He saw someone who had been fighting alone for too long, someone who needed a partner in an impossible task. I accept, he said firmly. Princess Zara nodded slowly. Then I formally accept your proposal of eternal bonding. Let the preparation ceremonies begin. The court exploded into activity. Officials rushed around making arrangements, sending messages, consulting ancient texts. But Ben only watched Princess Zara as she stood in the center of the chaos, looking calmer than she had since he arrived. Your Highness, he said quietly, what happens now? She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Now, Commander Torres, we save two species and see if a human and a Velthani can build something stronger together than either could alone. And if we can't? Princess Zara's smile returned, smaller but warmer than before. Then at least we'll fail trying something worth doing rather than succeeding at something meaningless. As the preparations continued around them, Ben realized he had just committed to the most important mission of his life. Not just saving his own species, but proving that sometimes the most human response, immediate compassion, direct action, willingness to sacrifice for others, was exactly what the universe needed. He only hoped he was worthy of the trust Princess Zara was placing in him. 3 days after Ben's proposal, the palace buzzed with activity unlike anything seen in centuries. Ancient texts were pulled from crystal archives, ceremonial chambers were prepared, and messages were sent across the galaxy announcing the upcoming ceremony of eternal bonding. But Ben wasn't focused on wedding preparations. He was in the medical wing of the palace, working with Dr. Sarah Chen and the rest of his team who had arrived on the fastest transport Earth could provide. The plague is unlike anything we've encountered, Dr. Chen reported as she studied tissue samples under a hybrid microscope that combined human and Velthani technology. It seems to be both organic and energy-based. Ben looked over her shoulder at the readings. The plague appeared as shifting patterns of light that moved through the victim's body, disrupting their natural bioelectric field. What do the Velthani healers say about it? That's the interesting part, Dr. Chen replied. Master Healer Keth says the plague responds to harmonic frequencies, but not in the way their traditional treatments expect. It's like it's trying to communicate. Communicate? Look at these patterns, Dr. Chen pointed to the screen. They're not random. There's structure here, repetition. It reminds me of language patterns. Ben studied the data. As a career diplomat, he had learned to recognize communication attempts in many forms. You think it's trying to talk? I think it's trying to live, Dr. Chen said. But it doesn't understand Velthani biology well enough to do it safely. At that moment, Princess Zara entered the medical wing. She had traded her formal robes for practical work clothes, though she still looked elegant. The blue markings on her skin were dimmer than usual, a sign of the stress she was under. How is the research progressing? She asked. We may have a breakthrough, Ben said. Dr. Chen thinks the plague might be a form of life that's trying to establish symbiosis with your people. Princess Zara looked confused. Symbiosis? You mean it wants to live with us, not kill us? That's our theory, Dr. Chen explained. In human biology, we have many symbiotic relationships. Bacteria in our stomachs help us digest food. Some fungi help our crops grow better. What if this plague is trying to form a similar relationship with the Velthani? But it's killing us, Princess Zara pointed out. Because it doesn't know how to connect properly, Ben said. Like someone trying to shake hands but squeezing too hard because they don't understand human strength. Master Healer Keth, an elderly Velthani with intricate silver tattoos covering his arms, approached their group. I have been listening to your theories. In our oldest texts, there are mentions of the living light that once dwelt among our ancestors. Living light? Ben asked. A form of energy that enhanced our natural abilities, Master Keth explained. According to legend, it disappeared during the Great Silence, 3,000 years ago. Dr. Chen looked excited. What if it didn't disappear? What if it's been dormant, and something recent woke it up? The mining operations, Princess Zara said suddenly. We began deep crystal extraction 6 months ago, right before the plague started. You may have disturbed its resting place, Ben realized. Now it's trying to return to symbiosis with your people, but it's forgotten how. Master Keth nodded slowly. This would explain why our traditional healing methods fail. We have been trying to destroy it, when we should have been trying to communicate with it. Can we try? Ben asked. Use your harmonic abilities to talk to it directly. Princess Zara looked uncertain. The risk would be enormous. If we're wrong, we could make the plague worse. If we're right, Ben said gently, we could save everyone. That evening, they prepared for the most dangerous experiment in Velthani history. In a shielded chamber deep within the palace, they brought a volunteer who was in the early stages of plague infection, a young palace guard named Tor who had insisted on helping despite the risks. Princess Zara stood at the center of a circle of harmonic crystals, her blue markings glowing brightly as she prepared to attempt communication with the plague entity. Ben stood beside her, wearing a translation device that would let him understand the harmonic language. Are you ready? Princess Zara asked Tor. The young guard nodded bravely. If this helps our people, I am honored to try. Princess Zara began to sing. Her voice created frequencies that made the crystals around them resonate in harmony. The plague patterns in Tor's body began to pulse in response. At first, the communication was chaotic. The entity seemed confused, sending rapid bursts of energy that made Tor gasp in pain. But Princess Zara persisted, her voice growing stronger as she tried to establish a stable connection. Then something remarkable happened. The chaotic patterns began to organize themselves. Through the translation device, Ben could hear what sounded like a voice, ancient, confused, and desperately lonely. Where? The voice seemed to say. Where are the singers? Where is the harmony? Princess Zara's eyes widened in surprise, but she kept singing. We are here. We are the descendants of the singers. So different, the entity responded. So changed. I tried to touch, but you break. Why do you break? You are too strong, Princess Zara sang back. We are not as we were. You must be gentle. I forgot, came the reply, and Ben could hear sadness in the alien voice. I slept so long, I forgot how to touch without breaking. Dr. Chen was monitoring Tor's vital signs. The plague patterns are stabilizing, she whispered excitedly. They're synchronizing with his natural biorhythms. Can you learn again? Princess Zara asked the entity. Can you remember gentleness? Teach me, the entity pleaded. I am so tired of breaking the singers. What followed was the most beautiful thing Ben had ever witnessed. Princess Zara began teaching the ancient entity how to connect with Velthani biology properly. Through song and harmonic resonance, she showed it how to enhance their natural abilities without overwhelming their systems. Slowly, carefully, the entity learned to moderate its energy. The plague patterns in Tor's body shifted from chaotic disruption to gentle integration. His silver skin began to glow with new vitality, and his blue markings became brighter and more complex. "I feel," Tor gasped in wonder, "I feel stronger. More alive than ever before." Over the following days, the cure spread rapidly through the Velthani population. But it wasn't really a cure, it was a restoration. The ancient symbiosis between the Velthani and the living light was re-established, but now with proper understanding and consent. The results were remarkable. Velthani who had been infected found their natural abilities enhanced. They could create more complex harmonic frequencies, their crystal working became more precise, and their lifespans increased significantly. "You saved us all," Princess Zara said to Ben as they stood in the palace gardens, watching children play with crystals that responded to their thoughts. "We saved each other," Ben corrected. "Your people's harmonic abilities made communication possible. Human medical science helped us understand what was happening. The entity just needed to remember how to be gentle." Princess Zara smiled, but then her expression grew serious. "The ceremony of eternal bonding is tomorrow. Are you having second thoughts?" Ben considered the question honestly. "Are you? I asked you first." "No second thoughts," Ben said. "But I have a request." "What kind of request?" "I want to change the ceremony." Princess Zara looked alarmed. "Change it how?" "The traditional ceremony of eternal bonding puts all the power on the Velthani side," Ben explained. "The human becomes subject to Velthani law, adopts Velthani customs, basically becomes Velthani in everything but blood. That is how it has always been done. But we just proved that combining different approaches works better than following old traditions blindly," Ben pointed out. "What if we created a new kind of ceremony? One that honors both cultures equally?" Princess Zara was quiet for a long moment. "The court would never approve such a change." "What would you approve?" Princess Zara hesitated. "I think you might be right. The old way assumes one culture is superior to another. But working with your people these past days has shown me that different doesn't mean inferior. So we create something new." Princess Zara's blue markings began to glow brighter. "We create something better." The next day, the Grand Hall was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. News of the plague's cure had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to witness the historic ceremony between Earth and the Velthani Empire. But when Princess Zara and Ben took their places at the center of the hall, they weren't following the ancient protocols. "Today we celebrate not the dominance of one culture over another," Princess Zara announced, "but the partnership of two peoples who choose to grow stronger together." Instead of the traditional Velthani vows that would bind Ben to their laws, they spoke new words that honored both human and Velthani values. Instead of Ben alone adopting Velthani customs, Princess Zara also committed to learning human ways. The ceremony combined human traditions of exchanged rings with Velthani harmonic bonding. Ben placed a simple gold ring on Princess Zara's finger while she created a harmonic frequency that would forever connect their bioelectric fields. "I promise to stand with you as an equal partner," Ben said as he took her hands. "To bring my people's strengths to support yours, and to learn from your wisdom while sharing my own. I promise to walk with you as a true companion," Princess Zara replied, her voice creating harmonics that made the crystals around them sing. "To bridge our worlds not by conquest but by understanding, and to build something greater than either of us could create alone." When they kissed to seal their union, the harmonic crystals throughout the palace resonated in perfect harmony. It was as if the building itself was celebrating their partnership. Lord Valdris, despite his earlier objections, stepped forward with tears in his ancient eyes. "In 3,000 years of Velthani history, we have never seen anything like this. You have shown us that growth requires change, and that change can be beautiful." After the ceremony, Ben and Princess Zara met with representatives from both Earth and the Velthani Empire to finalize their trade agreements. But the negotiations were unlike any diplomatic process in galactic history. Instead of the usual adversarial bargaining, the discussions focused on mutual benefit. The Velthani offered not just mineral rights, but partnership in their advanced crystal technology. Earth provided not just payment, but access to human medical and engineering knowledge. "This changes everything," the Earth Council representative said in amazement. "We're not just trading resources, we're creating an alliance. It changes everything for us as well," added the Velthani trade minister. "For the first time, we have partners who see us as equals rather than exotic suppliers." But the most significant change was in how other species viewed both humans and Velthani. Word spread quickly through the galaxy about the cure for the plague and the new style of diplomacy that had made it possible. Within months, a dozen other species requested similar partnerships. They wanted to learn human adaptability and Velthani harmony. The rigid protocols that had governed galactic politics for millennia began to give way to more flexible, collaborative approaches. "We started a revolution," Princess Zara said to Ben one evening as they stood on their private balcony, looking out at the stars. "We started a conversation," Ben corrected. "About what's possible when people choose cooperation over competition." "The other species are calling it the human way," Princess Zara said with amusement. "Direct communication, practical problem solving, willingness to change when change is needed." "They're wrong," Ben said. "It's not the human way. It's the better way. And you thought of it just as much as I did." Princess Zara leaned against him, her blue markings pulsing gently in contentment. "So what happens now? We've cured the plague, revolutionized galactic diplomacy, and created a new form of interspecies marriage. What do we do for an encore?" Ben laughed. "How about we just try being happy? Build a life together. Maybe have some adventures that don't involve saving entire civilizations." "That sounds wonderful," Princess Zara said. "But knowing us, we'll probably end up accidentally changing the galaxy again within a year." "Probably," Ben agreed. "But at least we'll do it together." As they stood together under the alien stars, Ben reflected on how much had changed since he first stepped onto the crystal platform of Zirion Prime. He had come seeking a trade deal and instead found a partner, a purpose, and a new way of thinking about what was possible between different peoples. The best part was that it had all started with the simplest human impulse, seeing someone in pain and wanting to help. Sometimes the most profound changes began with the most basic kindness. And if that was the human way, Ben thought, then humanity had a bright future among the stars.